Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Dan Hennessy here from K-Strength Sports Training, kstrength.com. Thanks for visiting this blog post. Today we're going to be talking about your hips, okay? I've seen so many over the years, so many people that we've worked with come in with really poor mobilization through their hips. And there's so many things that go on around the hip. It's one of the most complex, dynamic, powerful joints in your body, and it's so neglected. And it's a reason for a lot of back issues, hamstring tightness, poor ranges of motion on things like squats or deadlifts, so on and so forth. It's a really big player in a lot of things we do, especially if you're an athlete, especially if you're aging, right? The older we get, the more overall mobility and flexibility that we lose. So doing something like what I'm doing right now, a super deep squat, where you can't really see my feet here. There you go. We're with a straight foot position, with your knees out, creating good arches while getting into a deep squat is something very beneficial. So that's a great way to test to see where you're at. If you can't get below what I call sea level there, where you're dropping below your knees, then there's a big problem. You can see that my back is rounded. What Kelly Starrett from mobilitywod.com calls a global stretch. This is actually an okay thing to do and a very good practice to get into, as long as you're not loading it up, right? I'm not putting a barbell on, I'm not holding any weight. I'm just learning how to get low, and then eventually you can learn how to do it with a straighter back position so we can really develop really good technique on, again, some of those bigger lifts, or when you're running, jumping, or just going throughout your day. You're picking a piece of paper off the floor, whatever it might be. So I'm going to really quickly kind of go through three of my top three favorite ones here. And again, I got these from guys like Kelly Starrett, mobilitywod.com. I follow a lot of his stuff. I think he's one of the best guys out there as far as opening up yourself, doing some self-myofascial release on yourself, and just really putting yourself into the driver's seat as far as how can I make myself feel better, move better, which will ultimately make you look better and perform better. Also guys like Eric Cressy from ericcressy.com, and a bunch of other guys that I've read over the years and follow their stuff. So I give tons of credit to those guys. Kevin Ensenat as well, my mentor / business partner. Guys like Charles Poliquin, all these guys that I follow that are the top in the world. So I'm going to bring them here to you in a very easy to follow video. So my top one, my favorite one I'll start with is called the couch stretch. The reason why is because you can do it when up against the couch, but if you don't have a couch or a chair, you can kick yourself up into a wall. All right, so if you can see right here, we have the corner of the wall. What you want to do is get your knee into the corner. Okay, now one of the main things you want to focus on is keeping good alignment between your pelvis and your rib cage. Okay, what you'll see is a lot of people will go into this very extended position. A lot of people just hang out here all day, so it's kind of like a default pattern. It's kind of an application always running in the back of your brain. So what we really have to do is learn how to undo that. In yoga, they talk about lengthening the spine or making your back longer. All that means is you're taking your hips and you're bringing them forward. So we have to get some glute contraction, your butt has to get tight, and we have to get some anterior core, anterior ab contraction. And what that does is basically take my hips into alignment. Okay, I go from an anterior pelvic tilt to nice and aligned. Okay, so we get tight here. Your two landmarks are your sternum and your pubic bone. If they break the playing field here, they're not on the same line, nice and flat, then something's going wrong and we have to regress so you can get into that position and then work yourself up. Now the goal with all of these things is to do 1 minute on each side. You can go for a little bit longer, but I recommend doing it, and a lot of those guys that I mentioned earlier recommend doing it for at least a minute on each side. You'll feel the change in your body as you're doing it. It'll be easier to kind of be into those positions. Another thing I want to mention is the difference between doing mobilizations and just your typical static stretching from like when you were a kid in gym class is we're actually activating muscles. We're actively turning tissues on that are pulling tissues more open in the other direction. So for example, in this next one I'm about to show you, we're going to be getting our knee into a full bend, and we're really going to be activating our butt, which is going to drive open all these tissues, hip flexor, quad. You're going to feel it in your abs a little bit if you're really tight. It's going to affect some of your psoas as well. That runs deeper. So we're actively engaging, actively maintaining position, and then we're trying to push into deeper ranges of motion around that joint. So for example, this is what I'm talking about. This is the couch stretch. This is my favorite one. If you do nothing else for the rest of your life and you want to improve your hips, this is the thing to do in my opinion. So we're going to kick our knee into the wall. Ideally, you do this barefoot. We're always in shoes too much, so the more you can get out of your shoes, the better. You don't want to go from 0 to 100. You don't want to start like running around the street barefoot. But if you can do maybe 2, 3, or 5 minutes of some mobility work or some movement stuff with your shoes off, you're going to get a lot of benefits out of that. And then you can slowly progress week to week, month to month. All right? So I'm trying to kick my knee into the wall here. My toe is flexed all the way up, so I'm getting a lot of mobility, not only in my hip, which I'll show you, but around the ankle as well, and they all play off of each other. They all are interwoven. So I'm gonna get lined up, pointed up, then I'm gonna contract my butt, I'm gonna keep my belly crunched down, and then I'm gonna try to get this foot outside of my hand. So if you can see that, I got this nice kind of 90-degree angle going on here. My foot is right next to my hand, I'm engaging my butt, I'm crunching my belly down, I'm trying to maintain a good posture best that I can. If I'm not, don't make fun of me, all right? Big chest, and then if you can advance, the way to go is up here. So the challenge is you're gonna wanna kind of break and go into that extension like I was talking about, so you really gotta contract your butt. You might have to use your hand to actually feel it. A lot of people's glutes are kind of dead because we sit on them all day, so we really gotta learn how to contract, really crunch down here, and then eventually work yourself up tall. This is pretty demanding on most people's hips, so you're probably gonna have to start here. You might even have to bring that leg back and just come here and figure out how to get tight, how to get tight, how to get straight, all right? So obviously you do that on the other side as well. So that's number one, that's the couch stretch. A minute on each side, build up to. If you can only do 30 seconds, start off with that. If you can only do 10 seconds, start off with that. And then build up to doing 1 minute. The idea here is to pick one of these 3 and then do it for 14 consecutive days. If you miss a day, wipe the slate clean, start it over. There's a lot of science behind how you develop habits. This is one of the most effective ways that I've seen to do it. There's a million ways to skin a cat, but this is the one that I've seen that the majority of people, they can easily assimilate it into their life. So we're asking you to do 2 minutes of things, 14 minutes a day. If you can check in with us on Facebook, I would love to hear what you guys are doing. And that way you can keep accountable too. You can check in and say, day 1, I did 2 minutes couch stretch. Day 2, 2 minutes couch stretch. Day 3, so on and so forth. We do that with our nutritional coaching program, and it works wonders. It makes it so simple, so easy, and people really seem to enjoy it. All right, so the next one is what we call a pistol squat or a deep squat mobilization. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can either just do a 2-footed version, which most people will probably have to start with. Find like a wall or something you can hold on to. Make sure your feet are perfectly parallel. You're gonna squeeze your butt. You're gonna get your rib cage and pelvis together, just like we did on the last one. We're gonna try to maintain that for as much as we can, but don't worry about if you round a little bit or a lot of it. So what we're gonna try to do is go down. I'm gonna punch my knees out here, so I'm squeezing my butt, externally rotating. My feet are staying flat and straight. Make sure all 4 wheels of the car stay down, all right? So try to be like a bear's claw, gripping in. So we're going down, I'm punching my knees out, I'm trying to sit right in between, and if I have something to hold on to, I can really get a nice flat back. You should be able to see an arch in your foot. You should feel your butt squeezing out. You should feel your chest being tall. Try to rack up 2 minutes here or more. If this feels like it's super simple and you're flexible, then you can step it up to the pistol squat. Essentially what we're gonna do is get into the same position just on one foot. You can bring the foot out here, or you can bring it out here. Notice I'm still holding on to something. This is very difficult for most people. I still haven't mastered it myself, but what we're looking for is, again, that nice flat foot, deep knee bend. This knee can come over the toe as long as your foot is flat and balanced. You don't wanna be too much here. We really wanna sit into that heel. Your back can round here. This is gonna challenge everything. You might feel it on this leg too. So you can even get a little bit lower and kind of hunker down in there. Eventually though, you wanna try to work yourself up tall, brace up, try to stabilize yourself. So we would do 1 minute there, then we would kick over, and we would go into another minute over here. So notice how I'm really trying to drive that knee out. So again, from the front, what we're really trying to do is get that nice straight foot position with those knees out. You might have a little bit of ducking of the toes. That's okay, you can literally walk them in. You just don't want to be all the way out here, because then you're gonna get this collapse thing happening. We never want that. General rule of thumb is wherever your big toe is, we want to be outside of that. Okay, so it's like a border you can't cross. All right, so always kind of be aware of that. This is also kind of like what we do in our warm-ups. We call it a Cossack squat, where we really get out here and we get into this kind of one-legged squat position. And that's essentially the same thing. So if this is what works for you, you can do that. So I'll show you from the side. Notice how my heel is lifted up. So what I eventually want to do is work down into that, and now it kind of looks like I'm in that squat position, but I'm on one leg. And then I can eventually try to pick up nice and tall. Again, rack up 1 minute on each side, or you can go even longer if you feel like it's easy or you just want to go after it a little bit harder. The third one that we're going to do is called a hip capsule stretch. Basically what we're going to do is make a figure 4 while we're in all fours on the ground. So it looks like this. Set up on all fours. I'm going to do this leg, so I'm going to kick my heel up. This back leg here is anchoring with my knee, okay? So I'm locking my knee down into the floor. That's my anchor. I'm not going to move. I'm going to make a right angle here with my knee, and I'm going to try to get into a nice flat back position. I'm engaging my anterior abs like I was before. And what we're literally going to do is try to take your femur bone, your thigh bone, and poke it out the back side of your hip. So imagine trying to stick a hole outside the back, maintaining a good spine. I'm pushing back into it. All my weight is here, okay, on the leg that I'm trying to mobilize. And if you're doing it correctly, you're kind of shifted over, you can literally feel that head of the humerus bone in your hip gliding to the back and coming forward, gliding to the back and coming forward. What happens is when you get very short and tight in the hip flexors, which almost everybody that I see has some type of tightness or stiffness that's unnecessarily too much in the front. So what actually happens is it locks in, it actually pulls your femur bone to the front of that hip capsule. So your femur bone is kind of hanging out in the front here, so that when you go to do things like a deadlift or a squat or whatever it is, a lunge, you're all jammed up. You get impinged. You get that pinching feeling or that nice stabbing feeling right here. A lot of that is due to really tight tissues, really stiff tissues that won't allow your femur bone to glide properly and sit back into the hip. So this is a great way to hit a couple of different things. We're working on that gliding through the capsule, okay? So the hip capsule is basically just like a big cat, okay? And there are tissues inside of it that control where that bone is actually orientated in it. So by loosening up some of it, think of it like a paper clip, right? You bend a paper clip back and forth a bunch of times to try to break down some of that tissue so it gets a little less sticky, a little bit more fluid. And if you're doing this sitting back into the hip, you can either hold it for a minute and really try to sink into it, really try to feel those tissues that you're trying to hit, keep adjusting, getting into better positions, or you can paper clip and go for about 20 to 30, maybe even 40 reps, or about a minute of work on each side, where you're kind of trying to open it up a little bit more, really get into the tissues, really get into those areas that you feel tight. As long as you're maintaining a good spine, you can kind of play around with the position and search for areas that you feel are tighter on you than they might be on somebody else. So it's very individual. Some people are a little bit tighter towards the pubic bone, some people are a little bit tighter towards the outside of the hip. So everybody's got their own kind of baggage that they have. Your job is to go in there, feel which one works the most for you, hits the areas that are tightest on you, and do that for 14 days. After you get 14 consecutive days, remember if you mess up, you start over. After you do 14, then you move on to the next one, because it's good to do all three. I want you to do all three of them at some point in your life, and the best way to do them is 14 days at a time. you can continue doing, so let's say you do the first one, the couch stretch, let's say you do that 14 days, and then you want to go into the hip capsule mobilization, the one that I just showed you. You can continue doing both. You can layer them on top of each other, but only if you're able to do it. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. You don't want to stress yourself out. So do the best job that you can. This video is kind of long. I didn't mean it to be, but I wanted to give you a very solid foundation of information, and hopefully you guys can incorporate 1, 2, or all 3 of these things into either your warm up, your cool down, a morning wake up routine, a nighttime going to bed routine, or multiple times throughout the day. The more smaller dosages you can get, the better. So you don't want to spend a half an hour doing all this stuff. You're not really going to get that much out of it. Only like the first 5 minutes are really that effective. So keep it to about 5, I would say 10 minutes maximum if you're really jacked up. And try to keep it more often dosages. So if you can do 5 minutes 3 times a day, it's better than just doing all 15 minutes at once. All right, so everybody needs hip work, even if you're the best athlete in the world and you're awesome at doing full range of everything. It's still a good idea to touch on these things from a maintenance issue, from a preventative issue, from a just enhancing your performance issue, and you're just gonna feel good when you're done. Initially, it's gonna feel very sticky. You're gonna feel very, very tight, but I urge you to keep going, because very shortly, within the next 3, 4, 5 to 7 days, you're gonna notice a big difference kind of in how you move. You're gonna be able to do a couple of things that maybe you weren't able to. You're gonna feel a little bit more mobile. You're gonna be able to drop down a little bit deeper. Things are gonna work out for you, and I guarantee you're gonna have a better quality of life. All right? So again, I'm Dan Hennessy. This is kstrength.com, K-Strength Sports Training. You're checking out our blog. Come back next time. I'm gonna be talking about some more cool topics. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover, email us, kstrengthtribe@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Instagram, K-Strength Sports. Check us out, ask us what you need, and we'll deliver. That's what we do. We deliver results, all right? Thanks a lot. See you guys.